All right, here we go. Help a Teacher Facebook page, Facebook Live, every Monday night, 7 p.m. Central. Man, I tell you what. Here's what people ask me. People ask me all the time, like when I'm traveling around, and they say they always ask, like, what's the best part of traveling around and visiting schools and meeting teachers and all the kids. And you know what it is, man? Like it's the people you meet, the stories. Like every place I go to, I come across the most amazing people, the most incredible stories. And in preparing for this Facebook Live, I thought, there's one person on the planet that I would love to participate in this conversation, and that is Todd Nesloney. And here's the crazy thing about Todd is I sent him a message a while back, and I said, "Hey, brother, let's chat." And I don't think we've ever met. He's like, "Hold on, right there. Yeah, we have met." And man, you came to a Teach Like a Rockstar event. It was, I think we both guessed when we talked. I think we guessed it was like 8 or 9 years ago. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. It had to have been a minute because I was still a teacher at the time. I went with my mom, and you had really long hair. That's all I remember. Really long curly hair.
Yes. It was a good crop that year for sure, brother. Yeah. And so things have changed, man. Nature took over. You know what it was? I saw my people started talking about my bald spot on the back of my head. I'm like, my bald spot? And I go, yeah. And I said, I didn't know I had a bald spot. And they're like, we're all looking down, like right on it. It's right there. No one told me. That day I went to the barber. I got it all shaved off.
Oh, man.
Hey, man, let me ask you a question. You have your Kids Deserve It book. You have your Stories from the Web. And that book, the Stories from the Web, how did that come about? Like, what was the impetus for that?
Well, I wrote Kids Deserve It with Adam Welcome, and it was a runaway success, way more than we had ever kind of dreamed or hoped it could be. We were hoping for like 20 copies sold. Right. And so it just built this great collection of people. And then when I was thinking about, my publisher reached out and was like, what are you thinking for a follow-up? And I thought, well, I really want to write something different. I want to write something that's not on the market. And as a school principal, I thought, one thing every school talks about is we should write a book about the things that happen here. And I thought, but nobody's ever done that. And so I pitched the idea to my publisher, and he said, do you think you can actually get your team to write for that kind of thing? And I said, yeah, I think so. And so I pitched it to my team at my school, which was Webb Elementary. And they said yes. And so I've got about 53 contributors to the book. It's teachers, the nurse, the secretary, the counselors, instructional aides, the coach, the librarian, everybody, even our assistant superintendent, took part in sharing stories throughout the book, because my whole idea and belief is that stories are what bring us together. Stories are what bind us. And when we begin to tell stories and be vulnerable in front of each other and share not only our successes, which are so easy to share, but also our failures and our struggles, we find that other people come alongside of us and say, oh my gosh, me too. Like, it's so great to have somebody else share this. And so in the process of writing that book, I can't tell you how many things I learned about my team, because when we decided to write it, it was like we didn't want to write a book that was only for educators, because as teachers and as people on this campus, we're much more than our job title. We're mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and all these things. And so throughout the book, it's just a story of life. It deals with, my favorite chapter in the whole book, though, is called It's Okay to Grieve. And it's just a chapter from about 5 different people wrote something for that chapter. And it's about all of our journeys through different levels of grief and how sometimes those played into our environment at school and sometimes they didn't. But that's been the chapter that we probably got the most feedback from readers. People just saying, thank you for sharing that. It was so nice to know I'm not as alone anymore. And so, like I said, when thinking about what I wanted after Kids Deserve It, I wanted something that was 100% my heart, which was my school family, and I wanted to spend time amplifying the voices of all these people that I work with who haven't won national awards. They aren't on social media, all of them. People don't know who they are, but they are rock stars, killing it in the classroom, just like schools and teachers all over the planet, but they don't get recognition. And so, one of the best advices I was given was, when you are given a platform, make sure that you amplify the voices of others louder than you amplify your own. And so I thought, well, here's my perfect opportunity. And that book is my pride and joy and my proudest thing I've ever put out there. And so even though it's been out for almost 2 years, the birthday's coming up in January, it's still my thing I'm most proud of putting out there and getting to work with those people to do that.
You know what it is, man? It's the it's the authenticity of it all. You know, it's so it's just real life. And I think sometimes people forget, you know, those are these heroic people across the nation that have accepted the honor and privilege of standing before those kids. And I think people forget that behind the scenes of those people are their lives and what they go through and their own personal struggles that they try. So, I mean, they have all this stuff they're bringing with them around in the world, and they're trying so desperately hard to leave that stuff outside of the classroom so they can go in there and pour into the kids. And I think what you've provided is an insight, not just into what happens in school, what happens in classrooms, but really what happens in the hearts of teachers.
Well, you know, and it's so funny because all of us around this country and around the world work at different schools, obviously. But sometimes when we don't ever get outside the walls of our school or our district, we begin to feel like some of this pressure coming down on us, some of these things going on, like they're only happening to us. And it's like, what am I doing wrong? What am I not getting? This is so hard. And when you start to hear the stories of others, you're like, oh, they have a kid like that too. They have a principal like that. They've been through this. They've struggled with that. And so this book really has been a place for educators and moms and dads and grandparents to go to and say, oh, I'm not the only one. Like, what is going on here?
I thought I was the crazy one.
And you know, there's people like me and you, Hal, who when people look at us, they think, oh, they've got it all together. Everything works out for them. And it's like, no, we screw up just as much as everybody else, but it's really hard to get that through to some people. And so that was the other idea behind this book of, you know what, I'm just going to bring you real people who are not in it for anything else than I just show up for work and my principal begged me to write something. And so I just put something out there, and so that they can see like these are real in the trenches people, not people who are just faking it or anything like that. So
right. And you know, like crowdsourcing the book is just so genius. When I was a PAL sponsor, and at the state level, they asked me to come to do a best practices. You had a really strong PALS program, and they said, will you come to the state conference and do like a breakout with all the PAL sponsors on your best practices? And I said, sure, because I'm awesome. Of course I will. I'm the best. And then I show up and I'm standing in front of all these PAL sponsors. And I said, here's my first best practice. Here's my great idea I'm going to share with you. And as soon as I get done talking about that one, a lady raises her hand and she goes, well, we do that too, but here's how we do it. And brother, it was so much better than mine.
Yeah, it always is.
Yeah, and I said, okay, here we go. So here's my second best practice, and I share that one, and like 4 hands go up, and I said, all right, here we go. Let's go ahead. And it was all so much better than mine. So the second year, they asked me to do that thing again. I said, no, but here's what I will do. I will come, and here's what we tell them. The ticket to come into the breakout session is every sponsor has to bring one page full of their best ideas that they do with their program. And that way, at the end, everybody had to bring 100 copies. So we just put them in. We just collated them right there, and everybody walked out with a 100-page book of the best practices across the state. And I said, there you go, because it's so true, man. Like walking around thinking like I've got this figured out, like I have the best ideas, is completely ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. You're exactly right. And what you find too is some people like to use that excuse of, well, my stuff's not that great, or oh, everybody knows, everybody's doing it like I'm doing it. And it's like you forget that even if you've been in education 30 or 40 years, like, yeah, you may have heard of this idea 20 years ago, but you totally forgot about it until somebody else brings it up. Because that's what I've seen a lot is I'll share something that I think like everybody knows about, or a web tool, and I'm like, why am I even sharing this again? And somebody will come back to me and goes, I'm so glad you shared that. I used to use that, but I've totally forgot. But I'm going to go back and try this new thing with it now because you brought it back up. And it's like, I remember a woman named Angela Myers told me, she said, make sure that you are sharing your genius with the world. Otherwise, you are doing a disservice to your field. And every one of us brings something fantastic to the table. Every one of us has a story worth sharing. Our ideas are worth sharing. And so don't sit back and demean your own abilities because you're in this field because you can do fantastic things. And so get out there and share. And even if only one person cares about what you have to share, That's what we're in it for, is to at least change one life. I mean, with our students, that's the way I always looked at it, is we're never going to reach all of them. So our goal is, can we at least reach one? Because that one life can be that ripple effect that affects hundreds of thousands of lives down the road.
We always share this formula, and that is, I think just like doing the math is so powerful. And the research tells us that every person on the planet, on average, every person on the planet is going to have a direct impact on 10,000 lives. Wow. So we have to calculate that. So we have to calculate, okay, how many kids do you have in your classroom? Mm-hmm. Times 10,000. How many kids do you see each school year? Times 10,000. How many years have you taught? Times how many kids per year? Times 10,000. And it gets into the millions. And that's why I always tell people, like, there is no other profession on the planet where you can have this kind of an impact, not just on a kid's life, not just on the legacy of a family, but truly on a generation. One person standing before kids at the front of the classroom really can have that kind of an impact.
Yep. You're exactly right. And that's why we can't ever demean what we do or act like it's not good enough, because because some people like to look at the social media day and age that we're in and think that they have to have followers or likes or things like that. And it's like, that's just the icing. What you're in there with those kids, that's the lives you're changing.
It's everything. And you're right, man. We forget that. And that's why I love this role I have. And, I was just in a town called Quitman, Texas, and I was in Quitman ISD, and I spent a day there at the high school. And brother, it's a small town. I think there may be a 2A or 3A, I don't know. And, but such a strong community. And to work with those kids and to hear what they say about the teachers and the impact that they have on our lives. And man, I know we want some achievement. I know we want the test scores. I know we want all that. But at the end of the day in Quitman, we were able to put the kids and the teachers together. And teachers talk about what they really want for their kids. And for a lot of kids, man, it'll be the first time that their English teacher doesn't say a word about English. And their math teacher doesn't mention math, and they talk about what they really want for that kid. And then those kids will get up, because of all the work we do and the courage we kind of build up for them along the course of the day. They'll talk about the difference that teachers are making in their lives, and they'll talk to teachers individually right there in front of everybody. And to hear these kids, tell the head football coach that he's the father they never had.
Right.
I mean, yeah, we want wins and not losses. Of course we want all that stuff. But the impact that Coach Oaks has on the lives of these kids, when these kids talk to their English teacher about, like, they're the one that when they have a problem, that's who they go to. It is just incredible.
Oh, I can imagine. And, and what I love about things like that is it doesn't just impact the adult they're speaking to in that moment. The other adults in the room that are hearing it, it impacts them too. Because, like, even you re-sharing that story right now, I was like tearing up a little bit. Like, that's all of us in education. That's the impact we hope we have, that we can hear kids say that to us.
And man, like, I really hope, like, we start to do it. But if I feel like we're falling short in terms of school leadership in one area, if I had to pick one area, I think oftentimes we don't provide our teachers with enough evidence that they're making a difference. Like, we're so good about the academic evidence. Like, we can track data like nobody's business, and we can synthesize it and do the analysis and post it. But to give teachers the evidence that a kid's life is being changed right now because of your work, and there's examples of it everywhere. Yeah. I think sometimes we're just numb to it and we don't recognize it.
Yeah, sometimes, we allow so many things to get placed on our plates that those kind of things like you're mentioning are the first things that we push off to the side and think that other things are more important. And it takes that recalibration moment for us to go, no, these may not be the data on the page, but this is equally as important if we're going to keep that teacher's fire burning and let them know they're here for a reason.
Yeah. Hey man, when you're out there, because now, you're on the road and you're visiting schools and, and you are, have this position with TEPSA and you see so many great things out there. Is there anything that you've come across recently that was just like a mind blow? Like, oh my gosh, they're doing amazing things here.
Oh, that's the great thing about my new job with TEPSA is I'm their director of culture and strategic leadership. And one of the things that I get to do as part of my job is to go and visit the schools where their principals are members of TEPSA. And so I have not walked into one school and not had a takeaway, not had something that I was like, ooh, if I was still at my school, I would totally do this. One of my favorite things that I remember is I walked into a front office, and I believe it was in Lubbock, Texas. And I walk in the front office and I see this huge wall as soon as you walk in, covered in staff photos. And on every staff photo, there was something written on it, or that person's name or anything like that. But it wasn't like your typical like company photos that some photographer comes in and takes. But each teacher had a different background, each staff member. And it was just such a neat thing to walk in and see a whole wall collage of the people that are standing behind these kids.
Yeah.
And, as I think about the schools that do that, or, at our school, something we did that I have seen at several schools as well is as you walk up and down the halls, it's not exclusively student work in the halls. There's pictures of kids. And so pictures, not stock photos of kids, pictures of kids that are on that campus, pictures of teachers that are on that campus. When you walk in a school and you see all those types of photos, immediately it warms your heart. Immediately it makes the place feel like a home. Because when we walk into our homes, anybody's home you walk into, somewhere in that home when you're walking in, you're going to see framed photos of the family, of the kids, of whatever. But so many times when we walk into school, it just feels like an institution because there's just work lining the halls. And I remember somebody once told me, they were like, because I asked them, I visited school and there was no student work on the wall at all. And I said, why isn't there any student work up? And they said, well, have you ever really asked the kids like what they want on the wall? Because no kid is going to tell you, oh, I want all my work put on the wall. No, the kids tell you, I want pictures of me and my family and my friends. Like, that's what I want on the wall, stuff that I like. And so when I went back to school after that, I was like, done. We're changing it. We got these big 40-inch by 30-inch canvas prints of our kids in canvas because I want it to look really, really nice. Like we put energy into it and line the hallways with them up and down the offices. And it was just a mood changer immediately because when you're having those rough days, those kids are your reminders. And so as you're walking down the hall and seeing photos, and some of those photos are recalling memories because you were there when the photo happened, it's just a heartwarming moment to go, yep, these are all my reminders of why I do what I do.
It's powerful. And I think, just making that shift from that institutionalized look that traditionally happens with school to one of a home. Like it's really hard to create a campus family inside of an institutionalized building. Like you really have to make it a home.
Yeah. And, I have to remember too, it doesn't matter what grade levels you have on your campus. If you're not seeking input of the students, you aren't truly having a campus for kids. Yeah. If all the adults are making all the design decisions of your school, you haven't a school built for adults. And even though some of us may be kids at heart, like I know me and you are, we've still got all those kid-like qualities. It still is different when you're 8 years old and your perspective and what you think. And so whether it's getting their opinion of how the cafeteria tables should be set up or what should be in the front lobby or how can we fix the bathrooms up, like we made it a point at my campus to really always go with kids and say, what do you think about how we were doing this? Is there something you do better? And we completely changed our cafeteria setup. Our tables got completely reorganized because a group of fourth graders said, we think we have a better idea and here's what we think it should be. And when they said it, I was like, oh, I love that. And I would have never thought of that. So we're totally doing it. And that's what I love is some of the best ideas are from kids because they have to be there every day. Let them give them a space that they have a voice in.
Yeah. I was at a campus recently. I want to say it was in Georgetown Texas. And man, I'm getting old, brother. It's all running together now. But, they had a new administration come into a school and it was kind of that's what they did from the day one. They said, let's take a look at everything we do from the point of view of a kid. And they started with what time do the buses roll in? Where do they roll in? What doors do the kids come in? Where do the teachers park? Like, is that convenient for teachers or is that convenient for kids? And they redid. It was amazing how many things were just traditional in the sense of this is probably best for administration or it might be best for teachers, but is it really best for kids? Let's take a look at that. And they changed so much about the school.
Yeah, I made it a point my last 2 years as an administrator at my school to always have somebody in the room who, when we were making decisions, it was their job, if any decisions were made in the meeting, to, as soon as the decision was made, raise their hand and say, are we doing this because it's easier for adults or because it's what's best for kids? Because if we're only doing it because it's easier for us, let's relook at that decision. And I don't mean this, sometimes when I say that, some people say, well, we can't bend over backwards and do everything for I'm not saying that. Right. I'm not saying we make our lives miserable and add on tons of extra work just to give the kids everything they want. No, life in a candy store is not a healthy life. And so, but it's an idea of some things, some decisions that we make right away as adults, we flippantly make them because we think, yeah, let's do that. That's the best way to do it. And then we realize, but it's not really what's best for kids. It's just making our life easy. And so let's see, can we do something a little bit different that is really what's best for kids and doesn't kill us trying to do it?
What I've seen is the deeper into the years a person in a school leadership position goes, the more open they are to these kinds of ideas. I think maybe at the beginning sometimes there's kind of this ego base and there's a little bit of fear because I don't know what I'm really doing. I'm not sure what this is all about. They're trying to, play the role of the administrator and what they think people want. But really it's when a leader gets to that point of being completely ego free and open to all the ideas and becoming more of an educational entrepreneur, that's when those magical moments happen.
Yeah, and being vulnerable, I think, is a very powerful tool. And I think too many administrators have this idea of the only way I can be a successful administrator is if I always look like I have it together and I know what I'm doing. And I did not want to ever look like I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off. So I wasn't that way, but I wanted it to look like I'm in control. I know what I'm doing. But when it got to a moment where I didn't know the answer or I didn't know if that was the best way, I very vulnerably said, guys, I don't know what to do here. I'd love your help. Or I would say, guys, I made this choice and it was definitely the wrong call. And I need to apologize, and I need to tell you that I've heard you. I've seen that I can do that better, and I'm going to go back and fix this. Or I let them know sometimes when I'm struggling. I'm really struggling right now. I don't know what to do. Can people come in? And I think that not only does that give some of your staff an opportunity to see you be vulnerable in front of them, but it also gives them sometimes a little bravery to use their voice more, because some educators, their administrators, are more of a dictator than a listener. Yeah. And, listening is one of the qualities you have to have as an administrator.
It's critical and also models exactly what we hope for to be happening in our classrooms.
Exactly. Because you're exactly right. The kids need to see the teachers being vulnerable too. And not to the point of I'm breaking down in a staff meeting and crying and the counselor has to come over and console me. This school's, I don't know what to do. I'm not saying that. I have breakdown moments in my office or in my car on the way home, but I'm not saying have a full on meltdown in front of your team, but having those moments where they can see that you're a real person too. Those are huge.
You know what Brenda was saying is, Brenda was talking about how the best professional development really does come from the teacher next door sometimes. And I'm not even sure I would include sometimes. It's like most of the time. And I think when groups of teachers are presented with that opportunity, and it's almost when teachers get together, you have to practice it though, because what I've learned when a group of teachers get together, it's not always positive. It's not always productive, but you have to be really intentional and set up the framework of how we're going to do this thing and how we're going to get an emotional space where we can be positive and productive and get creative and come up with ideas and solutions. But when it happens, when you have a team of people, all that share the same kids and they all love the same kids all the time, that's where the most amazing professional development happens.
Yeah. And you can go to great PD at your service center, at PD you pay for, things like that, and really get some quality information. But when you go to the teacher down the hall or to a campus down the street and you see an adult in a room with real kids doing real stuff and it's not all perfect, that's when you go, oh, I'm taking away way more from this because I'm seeing it in action. Or even because we would do those kind of walkthroughs on our campus where it would be you don't even have to look at what the teachers are doing. Maybe it's something on the wall. Maybe it's the way the furniture's set up. Maybe it's the way they do a call and response action. Maybe it's what happens as soon as you walk in the room. Take away something. But as the administrator, I felt like it was my responsibility too to provide those opportunities for the staff to view each other on campus, but also to say, but we don't always know all the answers. So if you want to go observe a teacher at another campus, let me know. I will call that principal up and say, hey, I got 3 third grade teachers who really want to come see how your third grade math teacher is killing it. Can they come watch a lesson and then meet with them during their conference? And let me tell you, principals won't say no to that unless they're just stuck up buttholes. But then, I mean, you don't need to go see their campus anyway. But so many principals I call up, they always say, yeah, let them come. We'd love to have you. Can we come view yours after? And I'm like, yes, because no matter what the teacher's doing, you learn something from it.
For sure. One of the best things I've ever done is I was working with a elementary, middle school, and high school, and we flipped for a week, and we did lesson plans, everything. And 5th grade language arts teachers went to the 6th grade at the junior high, and the 6th graders went to the 5th graders. And then we had 8th grader teachers go teach freshmen, and then those 9th grade teachers went to the 8th grade. And then we processed the next Monday morning, and oh my gosh, they were just shocked. And the 9th grade teachers couldn't believe how young the 8th graders were, and they were just months away from coming to the high school. And then the junior high teachers couldn't believe how there's like men and women going to school at that, at the high school. And it was so good because you know how it is when kids come in and struggling in one grade, the immediate thought is, well, they didn't teach them anything the last year. And then they can see what the real challenges are from school to school and how these kids progress through, matriculate through the school years.
Yeah, and when you work at an elementary campus, like mine was a pre-K through 5th grade, you have the same kind of conversations of like the 5th grade teachers going, well, the kindergarten teachers just play all day, and the kindergarten teachers, well, the 5th grade ones, they just drill in test strategies all day long, and they have it easy. And so, in my book, Stories from Web, one of the chapters is called Switch Day, because what we would do is we would do a switch day where every teacher would go to a grade, multiple grade levels different than theirs that they've never had experience teaching. And it would be for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And so like a 5th grade teacher would switch with a 1st grade teacher, a pre-K would switch to the 3rd grade, and they would organize the time, and they would go in there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and teach in that grade level. And yes, the teachers were terrified, most of them, the first time they had to do this, because they were like, I don't want to go in there. Like, I don't ever want to teach that grade level. And I was like, I know, but you can learn from them. And I guarantee 100% of the teachers that did this said, wow, like I have a whole new appreciation for what you do. And never again will I say you sit there and color all day and it's so easy, or you just drill and kill all day and it's so easy. Like, no, there's a lot more that goes into this that we don't see when we're not in your room all day. And so it was really good to bring us together to see that everybody's working hard for kids.
Man, when you kicked off the whole Stories from the Web, did they what was the most surprising thing that you came across?
I took that idea to my staff after being at my school for 3 years. And right away when I introduced the idea to them, a lot of them were on board with it. We're like, yeah, we'll totally write something. Well, great. And then I realized the amount of insecurity and doubt that still existed within my team, even after all the things we'd done to amplify their greatness. And so when I would go to teachers and they would be like, I don't know what to share. Like, I don't really have anything amazing. And then I have to be like, you do this, and this is incredible. Can you just write me a story about that? Because I love that. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And so I think for me, the biggest thing I learned from that book was just the idea of how cool it was to help people find their voices and help people see that their value isn't only valuable within their classroom when their door is closed and their kids are paying attention. They are valuable on a level where people across the world need to read their stories. And I think that, as I do a lot of traveling and speaking now, that's one of the things I talk to with educators now is, I see so much hurt and so much worn out and tiredness from educators across the country and across the world. And that's where I think it's a great opportunity to say, you are brilliant. Your story needs to be heard. It's worthy. Every story is one that needs to be out there being told because you are important and you are valuable and you matter and all this stuff. And I don't think we can ever tell somebody too much how important they are. And so for me, it was that very clear reminder of even though I told my team all the time how much I appreciate them, I can always do better. And I can always be more specific and not forget people or leave. Like I was sometimes really bad about not building up my rock stars enough because I'm like, they're amazing. They know they're amazing. I already told them. And I would focus on the ones that I think weren't hearing it enough. And then I realized, no, I got to tell all my team how amazing they are because all of us forget. All of us have those tough days.
You know, I love about it is when people share and they're vulnerable and they get it on paper and they get it out there, there are so many thousands of educators that will read that and think, oh my gosh, that's so inspirational. I love it. They get inspired, but then they have that moment of realization. Wait a minute. Mm-hmm. I do that too. Mm-hmm. And then they realize, wait, maybe I'm inspirational. Maybe I'm a rock star too, just like they are. That's the beauty of it.
You know, and that was the whole hope behind the book. And that's how we end the book, actually, is the whole idea of, we hope these stories have inspired you. Now get out there and tell yours, because nobody in this book is famous. And we're just out there and looking at how some of these stories made you feel. Imagine if somebody were to hear your story, which is kind of why, you know, I started my whole Tell Your Story podcast, was based after I saw how valuable that was. I was like, I just want to interview people and just have them tell pieces of their story. And maybe it's nothing about education, but that's the stories that bring us together. And so one of my favorite stories, though, is from one of my teachers who I remember the book had been out about a month. And she came running into my office and she had printed out this email. And she was like, oh my gosh. And I said, what? She goes, well, you know, I knew when you told me that people were going to read our stories, like you told me, and it went in my head, but I never actually thought like anybody's actually really going to read these things. I'm like, I know, I think that all the time. But they were like, but look, this teacher from Nebraska found me on the website and emailed me because she read my story in the book and it connected with her. Nebraska. And I was like, yes, that's why we need to be out there, because you don't know, because everybody who's impacted by your story, they're not all going to reach out and tell you. That doesn't mean you stop sharing it. And so it was just a cool moment for her to go, not only did somebody actually read it that I've never met, but they took the time to find my email and tell me, thank you for sharing that story. And it was such a cool moment for her that I just loved watching her take that in.
Man, it's incredible. Like, that's the thing of when you're out there sharing this stuff. Man, I got a message on Facebook today, and a lady messaged me. She said, I went to your conference. Oh my gosh, I hate this language. She said, I was just a paraprofessional then, which drives me crazy when they put the just, because they're just as much of a teacher as anybody else on that campus. And she said, and you spoke and we talked, and then I decided I want to be a teacher. And it's 5 years. She goes, I want to let you know I graduated. And you know what? In the moment of having that conversation, I never thought like this would happen 5 years later. I was just doing my thing, and you just never know the impact from your story will have.
Yep, you're exactly right. And like I said, not everybody's going to reach out and tell you that it impacted them. And it doesn't mean you stop telling your stories, because our stories make a difference. If you think about anybody that's made a difference in your life or that really impacted, like when you go and hear speakers, you don't remember those speakers that was like, man, that statistic they shared, that was the best thing I have heard in years. Yeah. It's like, no, it was like their story about their kid or their story about their school or their parents or whatever. Like, that was powerful because that's where it brings us together.
It is powerful. And so the book, it started with the book, and now you have the podcast going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't even know how many episodes I'm up to now. I think I'm like up to 70, I think. I do about 4 to 5 a month. And I find people, I start every episode saying, I find people who inspire, encourage, or challenge me in one way or another, and I reach out to them. And I've really made a point. I had 2 podcasts before that. I did Edu All Stars for a while, and then I did Kids Deserve It. We did 100 episodes of that. And when we were doing those, we were finding like these big names in education, these people who were doing these amazing things. And when I started to Tell Your Story, I was like, you know what? I want to really find people that nobody has heard of, that I have just sought out and saw something cool they did or they inspired me. And I want to amplify their voices, because sometimes in the educational world, we can get so hyper-focused on this elite group of educators that's where we begin to build that facade that they're the only ones that have it together. Everything's easy for them. They're just so successful. Like, I'm never going to be like that. And so I've really tried hard to every month find educators that people are going to go, I've never even heard of this person. Or find people who aren't even in education. People who, like, I found a couple who aren't in education and they talk about depression. I found another couple who talk about having a child, raising a child who's deaf. And we've talked about suicide on there. We've talked about adoption. We've talked about all these kind of things, because when you tell your story, it's not just about the teaching. There's a lot more behind ourselves than just the career that we chose to embody. And so I seek out people who aren't just in education as well for that. And it's been a really game changer for me. It's hard for me to try to make time to do that series, because there's so much work that goes into the pre and the post editing and things like that. But then every time I do it, I'm like, oh, I'm just totally rejuvenated again, just talking to somebody and hearing their story. Because of the stories, man. And what I love about it, now you have an event coming up. Tell me about your event in January. Yeah, so I've been a part of a lot of PD, and I do a lot of things with the PD, and I love doing that. And the second birthday of my book, Stories from Web, is on January 24th. And so I was looking at the calendar and I was like, oh, the 24th is a Friday. And so I just threw something out on social media. I was like, hey, if I was to do an event for educators in Texas, would anybody be interested? And I got a lot of response, and I thought, okay, I want to do a day or 2 days of PD that is affordable, that a teacher does not have to ask their school to pay for, that they could pay out of their pocket. And so I thought, oh, well, I'll do a Friday event. And then some educators reached out and was like, well, we can't take days off, or we don't have any more days. And I was like, oh, well, so I planned an event called Celebrate Your Story, because obviously it's Stories from Web birthday. And so on Friday is our pre-party, and it's going to be a much smaller group. And so you don't have to take off work, because the big main event is going to be Saturday, where I've got a lot more seats available. And when I was playing this, I was like, I don't want people to come to just hear Todd Nesloney. It's always that mindset again of amplify the voices of others louder than you amplify your own. And so I was like, but I want to be very Texas focused. So I'm going to do it in the small town that I live in, where Stories from Web was written, in Brenham, Texas, the home of Bluebell ice cream. And I was like, I'm going to get all the Brenham businesses to be a part. They're going to provide breakfast both days. They're going to provide lunch both days. I've got a lot of surprises with businesses that are going to be providing things. And then I thought, and I want to ask some of my Texas friends to speak. And I want to ask at least half of them who aren't professional speakers to speak, so I can give them a platform. And some of those people on that list, this is their very first time to speak in front of educators, but they do some freaking amazing work. And so, and it's funny, because I always tell you, well, these are not all my favorite Texas people, so please don't get offended if you're one of my Texas friends and you're like, well, he didn't ask me. I only have so many hours in the day to fit in some presenters. But I really wanted to amplify some diverse voices that don't always get amplified. That's a really big passion of mine, is to make sure that I've got men, I've got women, I've got different nationalities, I've got different cultures, I've got different religions, I've got all kinds of voices represented, because we all play a part. And I wanted to make sure I didn't just have elementary. So I have elementary presenters, secondary presenters. I've got the arts. I've got the content area. I've got administrators. You're going to be there. And so I am so stinking excited. And as you know, I'm absolutely terrified at the same time, because in my head, one of my biggest insecurities is self-doubt and all this stuff. And so I'm in my head going, nobody's going to show up. Nobody's going to I'm advertising this thing and getting all this stuff donated, where every teacher's going to walk away with hundreds of dollars of stuff. And I'm like, but nobody's going to come. And so every time a new registration rolls in, I'm like, oh, okay, right. Somebody's going to be there. And so it's been fun to watch that.
I know the feeling.
We're already getting close to filling up on Friday. And I've got, like I said, a lot more seats on Saturday. So there's a lot more opportunity to jump in there. But it's been cool just to kind of see some of the excitement for people who have just said, thank you for having, because like, if you're just going to come on Saturday, it's $30, $30 for a full day of PD with me and some other awesome people, both meals included, and you walk away with free stuff. I mean, come on. If you sign up for both days, it's only $50. And so that means you get breakfast and lunch both days. Both days also come with a free copy of my book, Stories from Web, and even more donated stuff. So I'm super excited. There's a lot of giveaways and things that I haven't announced yet because I'm keeping it close to the chest. I'm going to kind of trip it out there a little bit more and more, but I couldn't be more excited to be having this Celebrate Your Story event.
Man, it's going to be great. I'll be there I'll be there both days. But I'm going to be speaking on Friday, and then also what we're going to do, we're going to do some recording, and we're going to do some interviews and stories, and then we'll get that out there. And it's just, man, all that you've created to celebrate those teachers is just awesome, man. I really, really appreciate it.
I'm excited, and I hope it's a day that teachers come because, January is getting into that second semester. So it's the perfect time to get rejuvenated and refueled to make the rest of the year and get some takeaways from all kinds of brilliant minds. So I'm excited for me to learn some stuff from these people that I can't wait to hear speak.
That's the thing, man. I get excited. Like, I'm glad I'm going to speak, but at the other time, like, I can't, like, I love being an audience member too. And I love to get all the goodies, Well, hey, man, listen, thank you so much for hanging out with me and all the folks on Help a Teacher, man. It's been amazing. And tell me the date again, January 24th. Is that right?
January 24th and 25th. So you can go just the 25th one, or you can sign up for the 2 days.
Do the 2 days. It's $50. Come hang out Friday. Right. We'll be around Friday night, and then we'll do the whole day. I mean,
why not come into the home of Bluebell ice cream? Perfect place to spend a Friday and Saturday.
Listen, when it comes to ice cream, there's a difference, man. When it comes to brands, let me tell you, brother, there's a big difference in Bluebell.
Well, hey, and in Brenham, Texas, where we're having this event, our HEB is the only store in the country that sells every single flavor of Bluebell ice cream.
Really?
Yep.
You better bring your Yeti cooler and load up.
That's right.
All right, man. Thank you so much. Take care, brother.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.